Hollywood, can we talk for a second? Serious talk here. Why do you insist on picking the absolute worst screenplays when it comes to horror films? Seriously, did none of the people who financed or released or made this film take a look at this script and thought, maybe we could fix some of these problems, or if it was unsalvageable, just dumping the whole project? Because the 2016 horror thriller Shut In is not only one of the worst films of the year, it is one of the worst thrillers in existence. The film follows a psychologist, Mary Portman, played by Naomi Watts, who is forced to look after her stepson, Stephen, played by Stranger Things' Charlie Heaton, following a car accident where he is put in a paralyzed, semi vegetative state. And when one of her patients, a deaf young boy named Tom, played by Room's Jacob Tremblay, goes missing while on her watch, and she begins seeing things, believing that she is being haunted by his spirit, and things get even stranger once a massive ice storm rolls in. So, I heard that this was a terrible film going in, so please understand that my expectations were already exceptionally low. However, nothing could prepare me for how abysmally plotted this film is. The film starts out as a psychological film in the first act, then does a complete 180 trying to turn it into a supernatural horror film before finally unveiling what's been happening in the film's third act, with a disastrous and story destroying plot twist. Poor Naomi Watts just looks like she is lost throughout this film, like she was lied to about the kind of film that she was in. Oliver Platt is also in this film as another doctor, and his role is pretty pointless, except to reveal something to the main character that gets revealed to her again later on anyway. Aspiring screenwriters, please listen closely because I am going to give you a valuable tip. Do not use a fake out dream sequence, especially if it is there only to create a false scare. Seriously, I don't know anyone who likes this trope, and it needs to die. The only recent film that I can think of that pulled it off well was in last year's The Gift, which actually had both narrative and story reasons to include one. Also, it didn't hurt that that script was great, and this one sucks. In fact, just see that film instead of this one. Everything that this film does poorly, that one does much better, including a much stronger twist, which was actually foreshadowed and built up throughout, unlike this film, which throws it at the screen with no hints prior. Were there any positives for this film? Well, the film is competently directed, even if it at times feels restrictive. Some of the actors aren't terrible. In fact, Jacob Tremblay is actually not too bad, though granted he doesn't have a word of dialogue, so that probably helped him. But this script is just so bad and so poorly constructed that any of the potential positives are lost in a sea of absolute filth. This film is proof positive that the most absolute, most important part of a film is the script. If your script is the worst script in the world, then nothing, not even a committed performance, will save it except extensive rewrites. This film literally feels like the first draft of a creative writing assignment with canyon sized plot holes, massive character inconsistencies, tepid dialogue, and a dull pace that makes the first hour unbearably tedious. And it is at this point we get into what makes this film so horrifically awful, and that is the film's final act. I can't not talk about this final act and how it completely and utterly fails on every conceivable level. So if you do not want to see this film unspoiled, then stop the video now. But just know that this film is a complete failure on every account, and the film's ending helps cement this. So, anyway, for those of you wondering, this is the film's plot twist. So, throughout the entire film, it's revealed that her stepson Steven was faking this whole time and drugging her, and the missing kid Tom was hiding inside the walls of the house because he was hiding from Steven because he threatened to kill him. I have just so many questions that it's not even funny. How exactly was he able to fool his stepmother, a trained psychologist, for 6 months that he was in a catatonic state, especially when part of that was in a hospital where they monitor your condition closely? How did Tom find out he wasn't a vegetable? Did he get up while Tom was around? Why did he do that? Was he worried about Tom telling someone that he got up? If so, why would he be worried about a young deaf kid who can't communicate well into spilling his secret? Nobody would probably believe him anyway. If Stephen was deluded enough to think that the kid was supposed to replace him, then how was he smart enough to stay in that state and fool his stepmother for that long? How did Tom survive living inside the walls of the house without any food or water for several days? During that one night, how did he get out and why did he go into Mary's room slowly and quietly instead of running out of the house and screaming at the top of his lungs? Also, why was Stephen acting like a vegetable even when Mary wasn't around? And what was his ultimate plan? Just stay that way forever? Didn't he know that he would eventually be moved to a hospital if he was in that bad of a condition? And then there's a whole bunch of other questions that I was repeatedly asking throughout the climax. Why had the lake not frozen over, even though a massive ice storm had just swept through? Why did Mary leave Tom alone several times when she knew that Stephen was trying to kill him? Why didn't the first two blows to Stephen's head kill him, or at least make him far less lucid? Why didn't Mary tie him up when she had him subdued not once, but twice? How was he able to sneak up on Dr. Wilson to stab him? Also, in order to sneak up on him and make the wheelchair move, he would have had to walk right by Mary, so why didn't she try to stop him? How is Steven dumb enough to make so much noise as to let everyone know where he is, except when he needs to sneak up on someone for a jump scare? Speaking of which, why did Dr. Wilson yell out if everyone was okay when he knows that there was an unhinged psychotic walking around the house? Why didn't Steven check the closet Mary and Tom were hiding in at first, even though he walked right by it twice? For someone as unhinged as he is, how does he have enough of his senses together to deduce that Mary had not left the house when she had tried to trick him into thinking that she had? When Mary had managed to successfully feed into his delusion twice, why did she immediately lash out violently instead of subduing him as peacefully as possible later? Why was Mary calling out to Tom when he is deaf? I could go on and on, but I think I've made my point. I would like to think that at least one person involved in the making of this film read the script, took one look at it, and asked any of the aforementioned questions I just asked. And this was just me throwing random questions as quickly as possible off the top of my head. I know there's a lot more. Put simply, this ending was made by someone who didn't stop and think about anything they put in their script, furthering my belief that this script was written on the fly without any further drafts. This film is a complete disaster from start to finish. Almost everything about it does not work. The film's ending is a disgrace and an insult to anybody with a shred of common sense. This film script is one of the absolute worst I've ever seen, and it deserves to be lost to the sands of time, and it will be in a very short period. I'm going to give this film a 0.5 out of 10. Sorry this video was so long. I just had to find a way to vent out my frustration and perplexity after having been through such a cinematic abomination. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.